Hello, watching this video will take 10 minutes of your time and leave you with a bunch of useless information about Tears of the Kingdom, which is a pretty sweet exchange rate if you ask me. Let's go. Tears of the Kingdom sold 10 million copies within the first 3 days of release. According to Forbes, which did its measurements in US dollars, each copy going for $70 is approximately 700 million. This makes it the fastest growing Zelda game in the series' history and also puts it among the biggest sellers of all time. And the impressive thing is that Tears is a Switch exclusive, while every other major title record-breaking video game release ever has launched on at least 2 platforms, a significant advantage. When seasoned Zelda enthusiasts start playing this game, they'll immediately recognize the name Rauru when first meeting King Rauru. That's because the Sage of Light from Ocarina of Time is also named Rauru. These two characters are unquestionably connected, but to what extent has yet to be fully determined. What we do know is that King Rauru's medallion has Sage Rauru's face on it, but not only that, King Rauru possesses power over light, and his secret stone symbol resembles the kanji, which means light. So stick that in your skillet and let it simmer. Of course, this game is gigantic compared to Breath of the Wild, which was the biggest Zelda game by far until Tears came out, which now more than doubles that record. But the difference in file size isn't as staggering really as the triple layer map, all the extra content, and none of the limitations of the Wii U. Tears of the Kingdom comes in at 16.2 gigabytes, while Breath of the Wild was only 13.4. That's 2.8 extra gigabytes. To put it into perspective how far the series has come, the original Legend of Zelda was only 128 kilobytes. That means that if you scaled back Tears of the Kingdom by a full 16 gigabytes down to just 0.2 or 200 megabytes, Nintendo would still have about 2,000 times more space to work with than they did back in the 80s. There are 5 idle animations that I've personally counted that'll randomly happen after every minute of no movement from Link. 2 of them, the one where he subtly looks up before fidgeting his right arm a bit and then looking down, and the one where he more prominently raises it up and checks it out, are brand new. While the other 3, where he starts falling asleep, does a little stretch, and feels a bug on his arm while he's crouched down, are all repeats from Breath of the Wild. And the classic gun show pose of Link when he's shirtless has apparently been removed. But something tells me I've got to be missing at least one idle animation here. The Zonai play a central role in this game, and we even get a new Hyrulean text from their civilization, but unfortunately, Zonai text is much more complex to decode than Sheikah, Hylian, or Gerudo text because from what I understand, besides the fact that the game is still so new at the time of the making of this video, so a good auto-decoder hasn't been made yet, Zonai text doesn't transliterate directly into English the way the others do. Instead, it decodes into Japanese, which I don't know how to read or speak, and most information currently about Zonai text translations brings up information about the name Zonai being a loose translation for the word mystery, which they were up until Tears of the Kingdom shed so much light on their story. I hope to decipher some Zonai texts around the map in future installments of this series. Apparently, some of it can be on the poetic side, but I need to do more research. Speaking of text translations though, there is one notable Sheikah text I touched on in a previous video, but it's worth noting here in case you missed it. The April Fool's joke seen in readable books around the overworld has an extended entry following up on the next day. The part we already knew says, April 1st, today was a dry, hot, and sunny day. I went to school. This diary is very important document. The new entry that was written after the events of Breath of the Wild and before Tears of the Kingdom, dated April 2nd, says, Yesterday was Fool's Day. Everything that I wrote, all false. That is all. See you tomorrow. Every day at both 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., the Temple of Time on the Great Sky Island makes a chiming sound, as if it's about to gong off 7 times to announce the top of the hour. But it doesn't. It does, however, give another reminder follow-up chime at 7:10, and then it'll stay silent for the next 11 hours and 50 minutes in-game time. Ganondorf's English voice actor already had previous experience doing voice work for the character, but not for Nintendo. His name is Matthew Mercer, and he had already portrayed Ganondorf in this 3-hour-long fan-made web series called There Will Be Brawl, based on the Super Smash Bros. Series that he also directed and produced. It's hilarious, by the way. I've only watched about 10 minutes so far, but I will definitely continue at links in the description. The Ascendability was originally developed from a debug feature that Aonuma and Fubiashi were using to exit the caves. They agreed that navigating back up and out through the entry was tiresome and wanted a cheat to get back to the surface. Implementing this posed other challenges though, such as ensuring that the player would not ascend into any empty space or out of bounds due to data loading problems. While cooking, Link now hums songs from throughout the Zelda series. It's extremely subtle and drowned out by the actual cooking music and sound effects, but you can definitely hear him humming if you pay close enough attention. The YouTube channel Gamer's Little Playground took a few more examples and isolated the humming so you could hear it a little better. Link for that is in the description as well. Purah has what seems to be a broken wing glider hanging from her ceiling in Lookout Landing, and you can stand on it if you jump from this railing. It's not the manta ray looking thing that hangs in the TotK lab, that's still in its place. There are a few ways to get past the final doors to the fight with the Demon King before you've cleared through his army of minions. But developers knew people would try to cheese the ending, so they built in a check system. If you haven't beaten Ganondorf's army, Ganondorf doesn't come to the party. So when you run to the spot where it's supposed to fade to black and the Ganondorf battle is supposed to begin, it just won't happen. But the music does stop. However, the game has not forgotten that you have unfinished business with the army. The musical cutoff zone is right here at this drop-off. If you go back up to the top, it'll start the music, drop back down, it'll stop. And if you run all the way back to the closed off gloomy door, you'll see little spots where you can look through it like windows. In my example here, I left the boss Bokoblin alone and he laid down in a somewhat risque pose. So I whistled at him and he can hear me, but he wasn't able to see where it came from and then he just went back laying down. Other than all that, once you're back here, you're soft lock, so I really don't even recommend it. The development team also anticipated certain players would try to cheese the beginning, and they better prepared for that. You can leave the Room of Awakening area without opening the doors, which also starts moving these cogs and creates a warp point that you need to get back up to later when it's time to do the Recall Shrine. Because this area is so much higher than the rest of the Great Sky Islands, you need to warp if playing as intended. So if you make this crazy jump and run along the edge instead, and then go complete the rest of the tutorial phase, Rauru will open up this warp point for you when he's ready, eliminating any chance of getting softlocked or in any way impeded from finishing the first 4 shrines and having to start the game all over again. While paragliding in the rain, if you listen closely, you can hear the pitter-patter of water splatter on the top of a paraglider, the same as you'd hear on the top of your umbrella if you were walking around in a storm. And speaking of water, if you blast Azora in the face with the hydrant Zonai device, they'll comment on how refreshing it is and how they want a fire hydrant for themselves. Other NPCs find the water cold and unpleasant. Most people know that Tears of the Kingdom was created due to an overabundance of ideas for more Breath of the Wild DLC, and while continuing the story by having Link's arm destroyed and subsequently replaced with the magical arm of the demigod OG King of Hyrule is what we got, I think only hardcore Zelda fans understand that the magical arm idea was one of the earliest development ideas for Breath of the Wild that got left on the cutting room floor. So in theory, we could have got it the other way around, where the runes from Breath of the Wild were controlled with his arm, and then maybe the Purah Pad would control Link's special abilities in Tears of the Kingdom, if the stories were somehow reversed in a way that made sense. You may have noticed that the Kakariko Kukos sometimes like to sneak off and hold meetings in the Kugo Hideaway. I thought it would be the ultimate stronghold, but if you follow them up there and try to attack them to set off the biggest Kuko battle you've ever seen, you'll be disappointed, because there's no fighting inside the hideaway unless you push someone out before they're ready to leave. If you choose to stick around and beat them up until the meeting's over, it'll kind of look like they gave up and you took over their territory. And am I crazy, or do these Kuko dive bomb attacks sound a bit like fireworks being set off? If you wear a shield with a wing fused to it while opening the doors to leave the Great Sky Island, the camera angle during the cutscene will have this design on the doors create a perfect outline around the shape of the wings. Did I miss anything cool and interesting? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more useless information about Tears of the Kingdom, like this video to show me that you like it, and subscribe to make sure you catch it when it comes out. And until then, stay well, stay cool, and always keep punching out there. Aloha.